There are 2 tales waiting for you, told one after the other by an odd set of 2. So prepare yourself, dear one, because this is Drops of Darkness.
Hello, I'm Anodyne Vaughn, and welcome to our show, where each week we give you a new original dark fiction story, written and narrated by me, followed by a true paranormal experience narrated by my gravelly-voiced co-host, Cameron Helkuik. Today we're traveling back in time to a quiet little nursing home, where the nurses always know who's next to die. After that, Cameron has a true story about a boy's terrifying night out on the farm. But a quick note before we get into this week's tales. We've been gaining quite a few new listeners lately, so we thought we would revisit some of our favorite stories from the past weeks and share them over 2 compilation episodes. So, next week you'll hear 3 of Stranger's best fiction stories, and the week after that, we'll share 3 of someone's best true stories. Not only will this give you all a top-tier selection of our work, it'll also give us time to work on some new offerings for our dear listeners. More on that next week. Alright, enough of all that. Stranger and someone are waiting. I am Stranger, and I tell only fantasies. Whenever your world has a grip on your throat, I am there, waiting to unleash the monsters that sleep in my mind, so that they may remind you that you have sharp teeth and claws of your own. Oh, honey, you're gonna be seeing lots of weird shit working here, said Lisa over her bejeweled cat-eye glasses. But don't worry, you get used to it pretty quick, she added before burying her face back in a book with a lurid-sounding title that made Hallie's cheeks turn a warm shade of red. She stared at Lisa with wide eyes as she processed the unexpected response to her story. She fidgeted with the crisp white hem of her brand-new uniform, dismayed that the seasoned head nurse hadn't waved her off and called her silly for entertaining the notion that what she'd seen standing at the end of the hallway that morning had really been a ghost. It was the 60s after all. Who would believe in such a thing like ghosts in such a modern time? That's nothing, said Charlotte, poking her head around the corner to chime in. Just last week, I was sitting with Doreen Collins, you know, that cranky old bat in room 12. I'd finally gotten her to take her pills for the day when she started talking to her husband, who apparently was standing in the corner. Only he's been dead for 20 years. I thought she might just be having a little bit of a moment, but I swear, I got a whiff of some cheap aftershave and felt a hand slide up my skirt. Lisa blew an exasperated burst of air through her nose and shook her head. Men. Can't escape them even when they're dead and buried. Keep an eye on Doreen, though. Sounds like we might be losing her soon. What do you mean? Asked Hallie. She was fresh out of nursing school and didn't remember anyone mentioning a single thing about ghosts. And why would they? But as much as the idea scared her, she found her curiosity piqued. Usually, if a resident starts seeing dead loved ones, it means they're coming to take 'em on home, said Charlotte, leaning against the nursing station counter, jabbing her finger up at the ceiling after seeing Hallie's confused expression. You know, pearly gates and all that. Unless you're Doreen Collins, said Lisa with a snarky chuckle. She's probably going down south, if you know what I mean. Lisa, you are so bad. Hallie half listened to the 2 nurses chatting back and forth, while she stared beyond the nurse's station at the residents of the Pembroke nursing home. Most of them seemed off in their own little worlds, content to doze near the radio or stare out the window at the west lawn's sprawling gardens. A few of the more alert residents gathered around a table in the corner, trading tattered playing cards in a game that might have been poker, if any of them managed to remember how to play it. Nothing's more accurate than Earl, though, said Charlotte, nodding her head towards an old man sitting alone at one of the tables. He had a box of charcoals and a pad of blank drawing paper in front of him. Earl Reed's never been wrong. Not once, agreed Lisa. Wrong about what? Hallie asked. Who's next to kick the bucket? We don't know how he does it, but whenever Earl draws someone's portrait, They'd die by the next morning, Charlotte said, dropping into a whisper, as if Earl could somehow hear her gossiping. Yep, babies and the elderly, said Lisa, standing up and straightening her little white cap. They're the closest to the other side, and they see things that the rest of us can't. At some point, you just stop questioning it. The conversation quickly turned to who would be doing rounds and which medications needed to be handed out when and to who. Hallie jumped up from her chair to follow the other 2 nurses down the hall, but not before taking one last look at the old man. She watched him pluck a thin stick of charcoal and drag it across the drawing pad. His eyes flicked between the surface of the creamy white paper and across the room at the vacant face of a half-asleep Doreen Collins. As if feeling Hallie staring, he met her eyes for a brief moment. He smiled at her, and she quickly turned away. Sure enough, the next morning, Hallie was tasked with collecting the soiled sheets from Doreen's empty bed and gathering her knickknacks and trinkets in a small box in case her family came around to retrieve them. It didn't take long. The old woman didn't have much. But before leaving, Hallie tucked the half-empty box under her arm and made the sign of the cross, hoping she could put in a last-minute good word at the pearly gates for the old woman. She marked the side of the box with Doreen's full name and date of birth and stashed it in the overflowing room of unclaimed belongings. She turned out the light and shut the door as quickly as she could, feeling foolish, but also as though if a ghost were to be anywhere, it would definitely be in there. She headed towards the nursing station, where Lisa was waiting with the rest of her duties for the day, but Hallie hadn't even made it 10 steps from the storeroom when she heard a loud moan behind her. Her skin prickled. She turned, half expecting to see the ghost of Doreen, who maybe didn't appreciate her things being taken away in a box. But instead, there were just a few black-tipped fingers peeking out near the floor around one of the doorways. "Help me," said a weak voice as the rest of a charcoal-covered hand appeared. "Oh my goodness, Mr. Reed!" Hallie rushed down the hall to his room where she found the old man sprawled out on the floor, gasping for breath and clutching his chest. Despite his condition, Hallie couldn't help her attention be stolen by the papers pinned all over the sterile white walls, each one covered in black lines and smudges depicting the faces of the deceased residents. "Please, I can't go yet," he said, drawing in a ragged breath. Hallie called out for help. She learned what to do for a heart attack, but no matter how hard she tried to remember, in that moment, she found her mind blank. "You'll be okay, Mr. Reed. Help's coming." She held his hand while his eyes flitted wildly around the room. If nothing else, Hallie figured she could at least do her best to keep Earl Reed calm as he died. And countless scribbled black eyes stared down from the walls as he did. "I waited so long," he said, staring back at them all. "I held off the urges for years. But I shouldn't have waited until I was old." He grabbed Hallie by the arm. She flinched but fought the urge to pull away. His grip was surprisingly strong. "Don't wait until you're old. No one even knew it was me," he said, his voice coated with a thick layer of regret. "Even when I started drawing the goddamn pictures to give me away, nobody expects anything from you when you're old." Finally, Hallie heard Lisa barking out orders before the sound of people running echoed through the hallway. But Mr. Reed's words clicked in her mind, interrupting her relief. "Gave you away?" She felt like she wanted to let go of his hand, but he only gripped it tighter, blanching her knuckles to white. "They didn't even fight back. I always dreamt of them fighting back. But they just let me do it. I thought if I was caught, I'd be satisfied. But imagine being so old and pathetic people would believe in ghosts before they believe you capable of smothering someone already half dead." Frantically, Hallie searched around the bright, sun-filled room for something she could use to pry under his fingers, but the only thing within reach was the drawing pad on the nightstand behind her. She grabbed it anyway, His breathing was getting faster and shallower, but just as she was about to swat at his hand, she saw the half-finished charcoal sketch on the top page. With a sharp, sick feeling of panic, she recognized the face staring up at her. It was going to be perfect. You're so young, you would have fought back. And it would have caused such a scene. I was going to take a knife during dinner, he lamented, clutching his chest harder while the rest of his body spasmed. He pulled her closer. Blood was going to be everywhere, and everyone would finally know. Please, he whispered. Please tell them it was me, that I killed them all. Hallie stared in horror at Earl as his breathing slowed to a stop. Lisa, along with 2 orderlies, rushed in and to the side of the old man. One of them was finally able to pry Earl's fingers from around Hallie's hand. Now free, she shuffled backwards while they started CPR. She flung the drawing pad as far away as she could, where the half-finished portrait of her landed face down before sliding across the floor and under the bed out of sight. He's dead. You can stop, Lisa said. Hallie, can you grab a sheet off the bed? We need to get him covered up before any of the other residents see the body. Hallie? Hallie? Are you crying? Hallie stared at her hand. A purplish bruise was already forming under the black charcoal fingerprints. She was thinking about what Mr. Collins had just told her. Yes, she said, wiping her hand on her white apron and blinking back the rest of her tears. Yes, I'm sorry. He was just such a sweet, nice man. It's just so sad. Oh, you poor softy, said Lisa, patting her on the shoulder. But since this is your first death here, I guess we could do a little memorial for him, if that'll make you feel better. We can all say a few nice words about him. How's that? Hallie mustered a smile and nodded. She ignored the vague outline of the figure in the dark corner of the room. But every day after, when she'd feel what seemed like a hand grazing her throat, she couldn't help but remember what Lisa had said. Can't escape them, even when they're dead and buried.
Hello, everyone. In between stories, we like to highlight a cause that is worth our collective attention. For April and Sexual Assault Awareness Month, we decided to highlight the National Sexual Violence Resource Center. The NSVRC enables advocates to combat sexual harassment, assault, and abuse by giving them the research and tools they need. They recognize that putting an end to sexual violence goes hand in hand with stopping racism, sexism, and every other type of oppression. You can find out more and donate at www.nsvrc.org or from the link on our website at dropsofdarkness.com. Now, back into the shadows we go. I am someone, and I tell only truth. Whenever something slithers through the barrier between worlds, I am there. Not to stop them, but to watch them and remind you of the countless terrors your kind has survived, all on their own. This story is shared with permission from Alex. Me and my cousin used to work for a family friend of his that owned a huge cow and horse farm. We were pretty young at the time and didn't really do serious work, mostly just painting the barn and checking up on the horses and cows that just gave birth or something else. But it was worth the penny. One day, me and him were working late, so we were bringing the horses in for the night because it was cold as hell, and we didn't have any covers for them. We were also checking up on a mama cow that had just given birth to a baby, so they were in a special paddock. There were 5 fields, 2 small and 3 huge. The smallest one was the one with the cow and baby in it. While my cousin was bringing in the horses, I was on the other side of the fields checking up on the cow, and randomly, the electricity just cut out. I nearly shat my fucking pants. My cousin had the flashlight and my phone was dead, so I was in the dark, just scared out of my mind. Eventually, I just felt my way around and hid with the cows until someone would come get me, since everybody knew where I was. And I waited and waited, and nothing happened. Maybe 10 minutes went by, and now I really started stressing. Being a maybe 14-year-old teen boy with a sister that loves horror movies, I knew that shit could go down at any second. But I just laid there for another 5 minutes. Still nothing. Now, I really started panicking. I didn't know what to do. I just tried to sleep until someone came and got me. All of a sudden, I hear a lady voice yelling my name, like, "Alex? Alex, where are you?" Finally, someone is here, and also the light just randomly turned on. The best part is I recognized the voice. It was my mom. I was so relieved, I just ran out of the paddock and looked around. But there was nobody. The yelling stopped, and the electricity cut off again. And at this point, I started crying because I was scared and angry. I just sent it through the fields as fast as I could, screaming for anyone to get me. I saw the light from the generator turning on in the barn, and I just ran and ran until I got there. I ran inside and yelled out for my cousin, but no one answered. Out of pure anger, I just screamed, "Fuck!" and ran into my boss's house, and there was everyone. My boss, my cousin, my boss's wife. Hell, even my dad was there stressing out because they couldn't find me. Everyone ran to get me as soon as I came in the house. I was dirty, with tears in my eyes and a knife in my hand. "Where have you been? It's been an hour since your shift ended." I told them what happened, and when I was about to tell them that my mom yelled my name, I remembered that my mom passed about 1 to 2 years ago, and that was definitely not her.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Drops of Darkness, which is written, voiced, and produced by Anodyne Vaughn and Cameron Helkuik. If you enjoyed your drift into the shadows, help keep the stories alive by sharing the show, leaving a review, and if you really want to earn the favor of these dark storytellers, tether yourself to their world by tapping subscribe. If you have a true paranormal story of your own that you'd like to be read by someone, you can make the offering to submissions@dropsofdarkness.com or through the form on our website. Until next time, dear one, and remember, when the darkness looks your way, hold its gaze.